All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a great podcast today. We've had this one on the books for a while, and I'm looking forward to the dialogue. Right before we get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to VetLife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I want to introduce Jordan Genso. Jordan, you're a realtor in the area. You were a gentleman that just did a campaign for a political office. You're a gentleman that's actually been pushing the ideology of we need to speak together. And yet here we are on the podcast. I was recently over at your place of business, and I had spoke there, and it was cool to be able to shake your hand in person and see you eye to eye. We got to start my podcast the way I start all of them, though. I don't want to know about the man you are today yet. I want to take it all the way back. I want to know where you were born and raised, what the family life was like when you were young. What were the things that were influential to you, or what were the parts of your life that helped shape you into the man that you are today? And then we'll build up to today's story.
For sure, yes. So I actually grew up in Novi, so not far from here. My family moved there when I was 3 from Southfield, and I grew up Novi, upper middle class community, but we were very much a working class family. And my mom was like the school cook. My dad was a computer IT guy. Eventually, though, my mother entered the real estate realm and found a lot of success there. I was about in middle school at the time, and she had so much success that she kind of became the breadwinner. My dad became a stay-at-home dad. Just growing up in Novi, we then found that the community, it very much was a great place to grow up, but it just got to be a little bit too crowded. And so then 2 weeks after I graduated high school, we moved out to Livingston County, and I've been out here ever since. I went to the University of Michigan for college, the business school down there, but then graduated college in 2007, so not the best economy at the time, and saw my career options as forcing me to leave the state if I wanted to pursue something aside from the family business. But then it's like, okay, if I want to stay in Michigan, I can join the family real estate business, and that's what I've been doing career-wise ever since. But my upbringing in Novi, a lot of it was a fairly conservative, libertarian, but more right-leaning upbringing of traditional family structure. And I remember going through high school, just my junior year civics class, I took a test, and it said that, I'm a moderate libertarian conservative. And so then I go into college just with that mindset. I voted for George Bush in 2004. 2006, I was rooting for Dick DeVos over Granholm, but didn't end up voting. But while I was at the business school and I was being taught, okay, here we are, the future business leaders of the country, they're teaching us how to, when making decisions, do what's in the best interest of the businesses and the fiduciary duty of those business leaders, which makes total sense to me. But I began to realize, well, who's looking out for the people's interests? And so that was really the door that opened that got me to start to view the Democratic and left-leaning policies that took me on that journey.
That was a super expedited, but very, I feel like you hit each one of the bullet points from your childhood. But I want to go a little bit deeper.
Okay.
Were you involved in sports as a kid? Was your family religious? What was shaping the young mind of Jordan? What did you think you were going to be as you're in middle school, as you're in high school? What were your relationships like? Tell me a little bit more about the formative years of your life before we get to college and stuff.
Okay. So, I was one of those kids who did pretty much every sport. And that's where we were constantly encouraged to try a variety of things, find what we took enjoyment from. I did baseball every summer, basketball, soccer. I danced for 8 years of jazz, and then middle school, before middle school, intermediary school, I joined football and was very much then football centric since that's such a commitment for time. Um, and I ended up my sophomore year of high school, I got a varsity letter in football because they brought up six of us from the JV team to the varsity team for the playoffs. And and yeah, it was like, okay, they gave us this varsity letter just because they brought us up for the playoff season. But it was one of those where then they turned football into such a year round, no matter what, we weren't doing enough of the training and all that. And it took football, which I had so much of a passion for, and it turned it to no longer being fun. So I remember the first week of my junior year football practice. I showed up after all of the off-season training, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not enjoying this anymore. And so I ended up quitting football, joined rugby instead, and found that was much more my style of, hey, we're here to enjoy ourselves. This is the right amount of commitment level. We don't have to take ourselves too seriously. We're here to get out of it what we want without there being such expectation or pressure that it's not enough. And so that's a good example of where I can identify when I'm in a situation that is no longer serving the intended purpose for what I entered it for. And in football, it was such a formative, athletic endeavor for me that's how I identified my football numbers, all of that. That was a part of my identity. But when I recognized that, yeah, it's no longer doing the right purpose for me, it was time to move on from it. And I think that's something that's been able to stick with me, in future situations as well.
100%. And that's a really good realization to have as a young child, because if you start seeing what it would take to succeed at the highest levels and you're like my heart is just not in it, then every practice is going to turn to hell because you're being held to a standard that you don't wish to pursue. You're trying to have a good time out there on the football field, be in the sunshine, throw the ball around a little bit, whatever position you play, and it's an enjoyment process. It's completely different than the drive of like someone that's trying to go D1 college sports, maybe wants to play in the NFL one day. They know they're like, I need to be an example of excellence out on this field, and if I'm not, I'm going to fall short of my goals. And it's like, if you realize you don't have that same drive, you're right, it'll take the whole spirit out of it. You'll find out like, man, I don't really love this aspect of it. I love that, like, man, let's go in the backyard, throw the football around, and I'll have a great time with my friends. And it's cool that you were able to recognize that at a young age. A lot of kids don't make that realization. Did you know what you wanted to be when you were in middle school, what high school? Did you remember your first dream, man? What did you have pinned in this life?
I think part of it was because here I'm in a working class family surrounded by upper class families in the community. My parents had instilled in me, especially my mother, just a love of money. And so I saved every penny I earned, and I was always just trying to, okay, any money that I get for, my birthdays or was constantly working jobs, as a umpire for the youth baseball league and just always putting away, saving money. And I assume, I just had it kind of instilled in me that, yeah, I'll go into investment banking or something. And so school was always relatively easy for me, where then in high school I'm taking the classes and I don't ever really challenge myself too hard. I wasn't taking AP. I was taking, kind of like the blow off, but then I straight A's across the board. I get great, test scores. That's why I'm able to get into U of M. And I just kind of fall into this expectation of, okay, I'm going to go the business route because, I take finance and accounting in high school. I never really pushed myself enough to find where my failure point was in any academic area. And so when I just start out in like the business path, it just kind of then, okay, I'm going to keep going on it because I'm acing everything. Why not? And so, yeah, then I go into college thinking the same thing of, yeah, I'm just pre-business. At U of M, you're pre-business for the first 2 years when I was there. And then the business school is so competitive to get into. When I apply, I'm just thinking, okay, yeah, if I get in, I guess I'm going to go. Oh, I get in. It makes no sense to not go to that business school. So I go, and I immediately realized, though, that this drive that was instilled in me from the beginning, that money was the only thing. I understand why my parents kind of put that on me because they didn't have the money growing up, but it's not it was a similar turning point that, okay, yeah, this is no longer what is my motivation. I'm not driven by this need for more money. All of my peers at U of M, well, over half, were going into investment banking, and it's no, that's not what I'm going to do. I don't need to just go out there and make as much money as I can. I instead want to be more like I find my enjoyment comes from the community and staying here in Michigan and just finding the right balance in life between family, work, community, just being involved, being somebody who's contributing and making everything better.
The correlation makes perfect sense now. It starts to all piece together. It's like your parents had lived through a different experience. So a lot of times if you come from nothing, you will have that deep gripping fear of like, I don't ever want to be back there again. And it turns into this quest of like, we just have to acquire as much as possible and get as far from that as possible. But you were growing up in that middle class family where like you didn't have that same struggle. You weren't going through what it's like to be in poverty. So it turns out to your brain wires itself incorrectly to be like, I just need to accumulate money and material things because that'll bring me the happiness that I'm looking for, which is not the case for most people. And it almost sounds like you were set out on a path that was in no way wrong. Like you weren't doing anything wrong, but your heart wasn't really in it. You weren't a kid that got lit, a flame lit up in your heart and you were like, this is what I want to do. Like more than anything, I want to be an accountant or an investment banker because of these reasons. You were just like a good kid doing the right thing. Like, oh, I guess I go to this path. Well, if I can get into the school, I'm intelligent enough. Well, I guess I do that. And it's, again, that same part of your psyche that recognized it was the backyard football all over again. It was the things started to get too intense and your heart wasn't in alignment with the path that you were about to walk down, and you were intelligent enough to realize that. You said, wait, I've experienced this before. I went another direction in the past. I went to rugby and I enjoyed it more. Maybe I need to pivot again and I need to go a rugby direction. So when this happens in your life, what does the next step look like? Because a lot of the times when you're opening a new chapter, those are some of the most frightening periods of life. If you have expectations on yourself, or especially if others have expectations on you, and you're like, I think I'm going to drop out of business school, that is like a very, very exciting time of life, but also a time where fear tends to grip you. What was that like when you decided I'm going to get out of the business world? What did your life look like? Were you in a relationship? Did you have kids yet, etc.?
So, and actually, because there is one more pivotal moment in the story where, so yes, I'm in business school at this point, first year is junior year business, and I'm realizing, okay, all my classmates, they're getting their internships lined up for that summer between junior and senior year, and I've come to the realization, okay, this is not really my path. I'm going to, I'm doing great in all my classes, I'm enjoying the business school, but I'm not looking to enter the business world. And so I start to think, okay, I do want to give back. The military was something that always was an interest of mine. Because this was shortly, this is 2006. So I remember being in high school, 2001, September 11th. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I mean,
Would you have been in like seventh grade then?
No, I was a junior or sophomore. Just entered my junior year of high school.
Okay, so you're like 37?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, I graduated 03 from high school. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I mean, if I don't go to college, I'd be more than willing to, enlist and go serve in the military because I do have that pull. But it's like, okay,
Where did that come from? Was your family very patriotic? Were you just a person that appreciated the country? Because the drive for military service comes from somewhere for most people. Where was that from?
I mean, a lot of it was just, I always have viewed myself as capable. Anything that I try to do, I am able to do. And so why not then try to do the best things that I can? And
serve the nation.
Yeah.
And plus the messaging came from the military, especially when we were young, was always like, be the best you can
Right.
be. We are looking for America's best and brightest to serve the nation. So you probably connected to that message like, hey, I'm the capable guy that given the right instruction, the right leadership, I can really bring out greatness.
Right. And so now of the branches, I mean, the one that has the aura of being the best is the Marines. And so, okay, my junior year of college, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do between, that upcoming summer. And I realized, okay, yeah, the Marines have an officer candidate school. So for those who are going to, upon graduation from college, they're going to enter the military, they're going to be officers. yeah, this is something that's interesting to me. I want to pursue this route potentially. So I meet with them, I get recruited, and I sign up. And so then that summer of 2006, I go to Quantico, Virginia to do officer candidate school, which is basically boot camp for those that are going to be officers. And I'm there, and it's by far the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. It's the first time that I've really challenged myself, and I am loving the challenge. It's physically, something that really pushes my limits, and just the mental, all of the aspects of it. It is very much a fun challenge. But I also begin to realize while I'm there, we're going through scenarios of what it's like to be an officer and what you're going to have to deal with. And I realized that my leadership style is not at all the military leadership style of, you give orders and everybody's expected to follow orders, no questions asked. I'm the type that my natural leadership is to try to get those that I'm collaborating with to understand, and it's a mutual back and forth, and it's not a one-way type leadership. And so it's like, okay, I'm loving this, but at the same time, when I understand what they're trying to get us to be, it is really out of alignment with my natural style. I don't see myself committing to 4.5 years of serving in order to really then justify going through this whole program and taking the resources and the training that they're providing. We were doing our own martial arts and doing all of these fun activities, running around with our M16A2 service rifles. It was a great amount of training they were providing to me. And as soon as I realized, though, that I'm not going to return the favor, their investment in me is no longer going to get out of it the purpose of them giving me this training, I then had to, step aside and be like, okay, yeah, I gotta leave because I can't make that commitment at the end. This is I believe it was a 12-week program, and I'm about halfway through. I want to stay. I would love to stay, but I've got to be honest. I've got to be upfront and say, okay, I'll stay for these 12 weeks, but at the end, I'm not taking commission. I'm not going to serve for 4.5 years. I assume then that means you would want me to leave. And they're like, yeah, okay. Then, so I did leave halfway through.
Got it. So when you were speaking about your style of leadership, I 100% would have guessed that before we even had this dialogue, because you always want to hear what someone else has to say. And you're very vested in the idea that like someone else can bring value to the table, even if you don't see it. So it's almost like you're always willing to be like, well, this is what I believe to be true, and this is the direction that I would give, but what is your opinion? Do you think you could have found a way to blend that leadership into the military now that you look back? Because you're far removed from it. Do you believe that you still could have been a great leader? Do you understand why the military tends to enforce that style of leadership? Just speak a little bit more onto that, because you're so far removed now from where you were.
Right. And I totally understand and respect, and I do not disagree with the leadership or with the military's decision to have that be their leadership style. I understand, especially because you're dealing with life and death situations that you have to have orders followed.
Jordan, we need to go to the left this way, move the troops, da-da-da. I really feel like we should go to the right, sir. Yeah. That doesn't work. No. When bullets are flying and bombs are exploding, there has to be a hierarchy of command where when something is decided, you need to put the most competent, capable people at the top of the hierarchy, hopefully, and they are entrusted with the lives of all the other people. And what a weight and burden to carry.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? But you can't be, unfortunately, there has to be a hierarchy in a setting like that.
And I always viewed myself as, even back in high school, like why I was willing to go the military route if I didn't go to college was because I always viewed myself as willing to follow orders, no questions asked. Like if I was an enlisted person in the military and my officer was telling me to do something, I wouldn't need to understand. I mean, because in that case, it's a trust. I am going to simply trust the person who's given me the orders, and I'm going to successfully complete them, to my abilities. It was a dawning realization that I could not be on the other side of that, giving the orders with no expectation of trying to get them to understand why. That is just
Why?
because even though I don't mind being on the other side, I cannot think. I don't like when people just place all their trust on me and don't scrutinize or test to make sure that their trust is legitimate or worthy.
But you said you would have no problem following another leader, and like you don't get the moments to really test and scrutinize them and find out, are they really making the perfect decision with full confidence? You just follow them. You trust them. You don't think people could just trust you?
They could. I know that I am overly trusting of others. I mean, that is my approach to real estate even. I mean, our family slogan is "It all begins with trust." My mother adopted the slogan in the 90s, and I've taken it to heart that yes, when we approach real estate with our clients, it is a trust basis. I'm not going to put a requirement on my clients that they have to prove things to me. I'm going to trust them. And I also know that there's times then that I get bitten, in trusting people that I shouldn't have.
Me too.
And I'm willing, because I'd much rather live that style of, okay, I'm going to trust people knowing that I'll take the brunt end sometimes, rather than being distrustful of others, because that's not a fun way to live life. That's not a healthy way to live life, in my opinion, at least for me. And so I'm always willing to give trust to others. I don't expect trust in return. I've never really worked through the process of trying to figure out why I don't expect trust in return the way that I
that'd be a whole, we're not going to go into it now,
Yeah.
but that'd be a whole separate podcast to really try to work through this psychology that you have on why that burden it scares you. I can tell.
Yeah.
You don't want other people to just blindly follow you. You don't want it. And I don't fully know why, but I guarantee you that's like a great dialogue to go down. That's something that when you do deep digging and kind of soul searching, maybe one day it won't be like that. Maybe you'll get to a point, like with age comes wisdom and because with your children, you lead your children, right?
Yes. And they are one group that the two of them, I do constantly ask for their trust, and so much of our conflict, as father and daughters, comes from when they don't just accept and trust what I'm saying. And
well, it's the duality of the conversation. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's an interesting dynamic in your life, and it's necessary.
Yeah.
Because like your children, and they're figuring out the world as they go. They're gonna have a million bad influences around them. They're gonna have ideologies that can cripple them, and they want to be able to look to their father as a strong man and say, Dad, like, what should I do here? And, that's a heavy burden to carry because people like you, I know exactly where your heart is, where you want to be like, you kind of need to make your own way. But if you can provide service and guidance and leadership to those children, and you can help keep them from some of the chaos of the world or the trap doors that they might fall into without a strong leader as their father or their mother, right? They can end up in a hell or in terrible places or all kind of things. I mean, there's so many trapdoors in this life, it's not even funny. And one of the things that helps you dodge that is powerful leaders that you love and trust that instill that relationship to you. You know what I mean? Because it's like half the time you see kids don't want to listen to their parents, and then they destroy their lives. And 10 years later, they look back and they're like, man, mom or dad, like, you were so right. So it's like, it's a hard burden to carry, but it is necessary. It really helps keep people out of a lot of pain and struggle, which is the number one thing you're trying to do for your children.
Well, yes.
You're like, I don't want you to struggle. I don't want you to be in pain. So you got to follow me and trust me now, because I am trying to keep you from where you don't deserve to be.
And that is and I think though, when it's with my daughters, yes, I do actually, I have learned that is what I am striving for with them, is just getting them to trust me, because I think part of it is I can't otherwise explain to them why why they need to listen to me constantly. Like, I mean, if I tell them to do something and they don't want to do it, it's a challenge to get them to understand. I think with the general public, the reason why I'm not asking for blind trust ever is because I'm happy to have them scrutinize and make me prove myself worthy of their trust. So if I say something to them, I don't want them to just blindly trust it. If they have any hesitation whatsoever, challenge me on it, and I'll explain why, because I view myself capable of being able to provide that explanation and getting them to see. I love educating people and just, conveying that information that I have over to them and trying to get them to see it as well. And so that may be why I don't ask for trust, is because I view myself as capable of showing it.
Your explanation makes perfect sense. But I also think you should, when you listen to this podcast back and you reflect upon your life, I do think you should realize those ideas aren't mutually exclusive. I do think you need to realize that you can be an incredibly powerful leader that stands his ground, that believes in what he does through to his core, and still be fully willing if at any point you give any type of leadership or directive or whatever it is and people scrutinize or challenge it, well, then you just stand on it and you say, absolutely, I'm willing to have the dialogue. And in fact, I actually enjoy it. I want to have the conversation. I want you to see the depth of character that I bring to the table on why I make the decisions that I make. I don't want you to do something. I tell my students all the time, you should never do something because I tell you to do something. You should understand why am I telling you to do it. If you do an arm bar because I showed you an arm bar, or make a life decision because I try to be their best friend, their therapist, whatever it is, you should never do it just because I told you to do it. You should do it because you understand why. You understand the value and you believe that it will yield a successful result. If that formula does not add up and you don't ask a question, you are undermining yourself. And you're going to undermine my ability to really be the best leader I can for you, because you shouldn't blindly trust. You should figure out, why do I make the decisions that I make? And why do I follow the people that I follow? And why do I believe in them? And if we had more people to think like that, which is, it takes me way more work. I mean, that's like a deep critical thinking process. It would yield healthier, more autonomous people, because you know why you're making the decisions. You're not just doing things. You know what I mean? Like a dog, when you throw a stick, it just chases the stick. You should know, why are you doing the things you do? So let's turn the chapter now to,
yes,
you have multiple closed chapters here,
yes,
in the story.
Yes.
So you're stepping away from the military.
Yes.
You're going back out into the, there's the blank book again.
Yes.
How do you start writing?
So now, senior year of college, I graduate business school, do very well, but I'm entering, I know that I'm not leaving Michigan. I'm going to, at least for the interim, I'm going to be in the real estate world. I, though, start to think to myself, there's more that I am interested in than real estate. I enjoy the real estate career, but I also have to find my version of it that is a little bit different than my family's. And so I also know, though, that I'm very much interested in teaching. I love learning myself. I love taking additional classes. Even after graduation, I'm going to the library constantly to rent the great courses on CD and just drive around, listen, take these college courses for free from the library. And so I decide, summer of 2008, so a year later after graduating, I'm thinking to myself, I should go back to school and become a teacher. And so I sign up. I registered at Eastern Michigan, and I really want to be a 9th grade, 8th grade science teacher. That's what I think I have a real passion for, because I do like science so much, and I think that I'd be able to just share my passion for it with students and hopefully inspire them as well. But now, again, this is an economic time, 2008. That
was the crash, man. Michigan got ugly.
Yes, and Michigan was already kind of ugly prior to the rest of
Nowhere
the country.
near to compare to what 08, 09 brought. But
Right.
yeah, it wasn't just openly flourishing communities and families all
Right.
over, for sure.
And so I have a lot of people in my life that I'm saying, I'm going to go back and get my teaching certificate. And everybody's so negative about it, just saying, like, why would you be taking on more debt and doing all these things? And then teachers aren't paid enough. It's not a career that is going to be able to justify going back and getting this teacher certification. And for better or worse, I listen to those naysayers and the negative opinions out there. And so 2 days before...
Hold on, I got to interject for a second, Jordan. You have passion.
Yes.
Sitting here and talking with you in a matter of, 30 minutes, I can tell you wanted to be a teacher. I can tell, because you want to help people. You are like an example of the Socratic method. You know how you really teach people to think for themselves and to be educated is you talk to them and you listen to them and you try to work through problems with them. And anyone that tells you that you shouldn't follow what you love to do because, well, the money is not going to be as high as you deserve. Listen, I know people that are very wealthy on antidepressants that hate their life. I know people that followed all the traditional paths and did everything that they were told to do, and they are deeply unsatisfied with their life. You know, some of the most magic moments of my life, I was at Reaching Higher's graduation the other day with a small group of kids that I worked with, and these kids are in tears, they're crying, they're celebrating, they're talking about the transformation that took place over the course of that 8 or 12 weeks. Imagine if every year of your life you can make a profound impact on little human beings that are going to shape the world around us based on the way that they come up in this world. Whoever told you that that is not the correct path is full of shit. And I just want to, I'm sorry to interject that in your story, but I just witnessed when you started to tell that part of your story, there was no passion really in the football when it got deeper. There was no passion in the military when it got deeper. There was no passion in these other areas when it got deeper. That was not the case for teaching. I could see it in your eyes as you were telling me the story. I could see the connection to, like, you understand that people would perceive your value, those children could be moved by you, and you could make an impact. And what people forget in this life, when we're more connected than ever, is that our real fulfillment and joy in this life comes from loving and being loved. And the more that you impact people, the better your life tends to look, regardless of the car you drive, regardless of what the size of your house is, all that. What square footage? That's nonsense. What matters is, are you being fulfilled in your spirit? So whatever people gave you that advice, I'm sorry, it might have been parents, friends, whatever, they're wrong. Because if they would sit with you and speak to you the way we are right now, we're strangers practically, and I can see in your eyes that you would have given 1,000% to being a teacher.
Yes, no, you are 100% correct that was probably my true calling in life, that I, in that moment, let go. And it may come from just a natural tendency to choose the practical over the risk. And so that, I think, may be what it was, is just, I mean, it was an opportunity to take a risk, and instead I went the safe route. I didn't go back to school and take on more debt. But at the same time, you have the presidential campaign of 2008 going on. And so I've decided, okay, I'm not going to go back to school and become a teacher. But, I'm listening to, I had assumed at that point I'd be voting for Ron Paul. I was a kind of a Ron Paul Republican at the time. But I start to listen to the Clinton and Obama debates going on in the Democratic primary. And at the end of it, it's like, wait a minute, yeah, this vision that Barack Obama is conveying of hope and change and just what he is presenting for what we can be as a country, that resonated so much with me. And I'm beginning to see, like, okay, yeah, I'm choosing not to go back to school to become a teacher because our country doesn't value teachers enough. And I mean, if it's not the practical decision for somebody like me in my situation at that point, why is that? It is the consequence of policy and what we are choosing as a country when it comes to our teachers and our education. And so, okay, I've begun to get inspired by Barack Obama to support the Democrats for the first time. And then I remember the Republican convention where John McCain, he had just chosen Sarah Palin, and Sarah Palin's speech the night before I think McCain was going to speak, her speech, I listened to it and I realized, wow, the Republicans, to me, they've embraced this anti-intellectualism that just really was off-putting to me. Like I had always viewed myself as more Republican, but I always had reasons behind my positions and my views. And here, the Sarah Palin style, it's throwing all that out the window, in my opinion. And instead, I'm now being asked to support something that, yeah, just kind of rejects intellectualism. I'm now, okay, not only am I going to vote for the Democrats that, Obama inspired me to do, I'm going to show up and I'm going to volunteer for them because I want to still fight for the intellectual debate. I still think that is a value our country needs to continue to respect and want out of our politics. And so I show up, I become the deputy field organizer for the county in Livingston County for the Obama campaign. I run like the GOTV, get out the vote effort that weekend of 2008. But along the way, I'm meeting all the local candidates who are also running their races, having their campaigns, because it's all out of the same Democratic headquarters. And as I'm doing it, I'm like, oh wow, yeah, I was inspired to come because of the Obama campaign, but I'm really like that I get to meet and know these local candidates. And yeah, we're Democrats here in a Republican county. They're not winning, but they're good people. They're running campaigns saying the things that I sometimes I agree with, sometimes I don't. I'm still coming at it from a conservative background, but at least I see that they're good people in it for the right reasons. I like it. And so after the presidential campaign was over, then it's like, okay, I'm going to stick around and continue to be involved with this county organization. They have me join their executive committee. And that was really then my first foray into local politics. And it's been my new passion and my new path that, yes, it's not the passion of teaching science that I had prior to politics, but I've found that it is more than an adequate alternative and has brought me so much fulfillment that I could have found in the other path.
100%. And that makes sense. And it's like, you said it well. It's an adequate fulfillment. So you're like, if I could wind back time, I probably, knowing now what I didn't know then, I would have made the decision to become a teacher, and I would have been the best teacher I possibly could. Okay, so I want to unpack a couple parts of what you said. So I agree with you to the fullest and have faced extreme frustrations within my own mind about the fact that teachers, police officers, judges, and many other incredibly important institutions within this country are incredibly underfunded, undervalued, and they're pivotal roles. What society does not make its teachers the absolute top of the hierarchy, best human beings that are teaching because of passion, because of knowledge, because of reason, because of logic? People that, if we took the finest people amongst us that had love in their hearts for the country, for people in general, and for the future, and we made them the teachers, do you know how much better this world would be? The critical thinking levels would go through the roof. The willingness to engage with the child and get their brain to connect to the frequency of which you're speaking on instead of saying, do as you're told because I said it. You would completely revolutionize society. And I remember being in my early 20s, you're frustrated at the world and you can't really do too much about it. And you want things to change, but you don't really know the avenues through which you change them. And I share your same frustrations. What kind of backwards society doesn't make that important? Or like police officers, you are dealing with unfortunately, it's hard to say these words out loud because people don't like it. You're dealing with very low-level people on a common basis in many places where your life can be taken from you. You can have a weapon pulled on you. You can be shot. You can be stabbed. You can be killed. There can be drugs. You are willingly, that is someone's father or someone's mother that is putting on a specific shirt with a badge on it and going out and trying to uphold the rules and standards that we set in society. And the value we have for them currently has never been lower. In 2020, I heard an acronym that I didn't even believe exist, which was ACAB. My best friend growing up and my cousin, his name is Shane. He's a Philadelphia police officer. ACAB means all cops are bastards. That is the most quintessential example of stereotyping and of madness I've ever heard. What kind of society looks at protectors of law and the educators of the children as not high in value? I remember thinking, Jordan, we have got to have systemic, that's a popular word now, change. Yeah. Because it is just not to the capabilities of where we are at as a human race. Now, the second thing that I wanted to unpack is, you said when you heard your first conservative speak, it was against intellectualism. I'm Republican conservative. I hate labels. That is so far down the list on what I am as a human being that, if you charted me, I would fall more to the right than I do to the left. But if you're a terrible person with lack of integrity, or you're a liar, or you're putting terrible policy from the right, I am against you as much as I am against someone on the left that is implementing the same type of things. But the way you said it was against intellectualism. That's almost like when I hear that, you're saying if you believe Republican, you are not an intellectual. And I consider myself highly educated. I'm constantly reading, researching. Why do you phrase it that way?
For me, that was a statement of Sarah Palin and her style. It was her speech at that Republican convention that, to me, was an embrace of anti-intellectualism. Not as a party
I understand
as a whole.
100%. Yeah. So you're saying you had an outlier experience with a specific conservative or Republican where you said, I don't like this messaging and I don't agree with it.
Because John McCain leading up to that point, I kind of assumed, figured I was going to be voting for Barack Obama, but I was still rooting for John McCain because I still liked him. But his decision to choose Sarah Palin and then to see the response to her selection, and then she gives this speech that I perceive it as anti-intellectual. And then to see the response from the Republican Party is she becomes a rock star for it. And to me at the time, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm no longer feeling that my former version of Republican-leaning, politics was accepted within the party. If they're going to accept her and view her as the rock star, then yeah, that's a rejection of me.
I understand what you're saying now. I understand what you're saying. But do you believe that all Democratic candidates and all Republican candidates fall on a spectrum?
Oh yeah, it's a spectrum. It's not it's not a commodity on either side. And because there's a ton of Republican candidates throughout my life and throughout history that I'm a huge fan of George H.W. Bush. I thought he was a really good president. And because, at the time, now I was too young to really be paying attention, but even just looking back, the reason he lost re-election is because he raised taxes. He raised taxes because it was the intellectual thing to do given the circumstances he faced. It made sense for him to do it, and he did it knowing that it would hurt his re-election chances, but he did it anyways because it was the right thing. It's like, yeah, that's what we should want from our presidents, is for them to do the right thing, the intellectual thing, even if it's not in their own political interests.
1,000%. The whole point of leadership is trying to make the right decisions, not the easy decisions, not the decisions that will get you elected, not standing on a stage and saying, hey, what is the popular vote around here on this issue? Okay, that's what I'm going to stand on. No, that means you don't have a spine. That means you're a coward and you have no place in leadership. I was extremely moved by Obama when he started running because of his charisma and his message. I didn't follow his policy closely, so I wouldn't sit here and say that I did. But I remember being like, man, I hope that gentleman wins because he was extremely charismatic, and at least his messaging on the surface was that of change, hope, inspiration, unity within the country. Those are all on the surface great things. Now, anyone can say anything. At that point, I then would have to dig in further but man, like I said, I've met people that are extremely left-leaning that I love to death, that I would go to war with, that if they ran for an office, I will have their back 1,000%. I'm going to shout out one gentleman. One gentleman's named Mike Ramsdell. He's one of the most influential people in my life. He's been like a mentor to me. He's been my jiu-jitsu student for a long time, but I look up to him in many, many ways. And he grew up in Flint, came from not much, and he just kind of takes the struggles of the world on his back, and he's a great man. And I have people on the exact opposite side that are the most far right that you can be, but they are amazing human beings. They are such high level of integrity, honesty. They will take the shirt off their back and give it to you. You call them 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, they're going to be there if you need them. And where you fall on the political spectrum is not even in the top 15 of my concerns about whether or not I support you as a person. You know what I mean? Because like you and I, if people were to label us, they might label us so different in so many ways, and then we can never have that camaraderie, that connection, because I would instantly demonize the person that I believe you to be without meeting you. And that's the one thing that I really liked about your campaign that made me I got to get that guy on a podcast, because I've had tons of people that are like, hey, let me come on the show. And it's it's not like I want to say no to anyone, but at the end of the day, I have a million things that I do, and I only want to sit, I can't be podcasting every second of every day. And you had the message of, we need to talk. Yes. And I was like, that right there is a brilliant slogan. I don't know anything about the guy, but I can tell you for a fact that statement is objectively true. We need to speak together. The First Amendment of the nation is the First Amendment for a reason.
Yes.
In a healthy, civilized society, you have to be able to talk to each other. And even if you disagree, you have to through talking to each other. We set the boundaries, we set the rules of the game, we create the system at which we will live in and hopefully find our own happiness, our pursuit of happiness, the whole point of this entire nation, this experiment in the world. I loved that about your campaign. So let's continue with your story. You joined the Democratic Party, because you were pushed off by Sarah Palin. It starts to bring some fulfillment to your life that could have come from an alternate route. How does it unfold from this point?
So I'm young, still early 20s, and I'm one of the only ones in the Livingston County Democratic Party that's at my stage of life. It's mostly a retiree club at that point. And so I'm also the one with the most flexibility of time to just, the 2010 cycle, I'm like the campaign manager for a very active state house candidate.
Are you in real estate at this point, by the way?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Real estate has been the background trajectory of my career the entire time because it pays the bills, and I view myself as very capable at it, and I enjoy it. I love helping people, and so helping people buy houses, that brings me a lot of joy. There's a lot of other aspects to real estate that I'm not passionate about. I find more passion in policy than I do in real estate, but I do love so much, the work that I do in helping people find their homes and buy their homes. So,
and my last question, sorry
Yes.
to interrupt you again. We haven't mentioned your family or any children at this point. Do you have family at this point? Do you have kids at this point?
So-
what does your personal life look like?
So my wife and I, she actually worked the front desk at the real estate office. I was working at downtown Brighton. We met, our paths crossed there. It wasn't until a couple years later in 2009 that we're both at a graduation party for my broker. Her son is graduating high school, and so we see each other again. We kind of know each other, but not really. And so we just kind of hit it off, and we start dating, and yeah, from there it turns into we actually got engaged the 2010. Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, they were doing a rally to restore sanity in D.C. And so it's like, okay, this is something, we're going to go to D.C., we're going to go to this rally to restore sanity. And yeah, I proposed to her at the Washington Monument. It just, that was our engagement. And then, we get married in 2012. And then, our first daughter in 2013, and then second daughter in 2015. And so that's the additional characters to the story, and that is why I love real estate as well, is because it allowed me to continue with my passion for politics and local, serving the community, raising a family, and being very involved in my daughter's lives, and helping my clients with their real estate needs. It is a really fulfilling balance that I have, and so I wouldn't have that if I didn't go the real estate route. If I had gone the teaching route, I'd have more passion in my career, but I'd be a little bit less, flexible in raising my daughters and being able to be there for them in some situations. So I look back, and I maybe should have made different decisions and gone to school to become a science teacher, but I don't actually really regret it because I've been very happy with the path that has laid out for me from staying with the real estate career.
So let's continue to unpack, so you're finding the story. I didn't mean
Yeah.
to take you off on a tangent. How does life start to come together and you really start putting the pieces to where you have the framework where you're looking forward to the future and say, okay, this is what I'm going to be. This is my goals. This is the trajectory I'm on, et cetera.
So the Livingston Democrats in 2010, after that election cycle, they decide, okay, we want to switch up the leadership a little bit. And so the the chair at the time, she asked me, would I be interested in running for chair of the county Dems? And I'm, okay, yeah, I'm giving a lot of my time and efforts to this organization. I have a lot of respect for it. Yeah, I'm willing to serve as chair. And so they elect me as chair of the county party. And so then what coincidentally that meant is that in 2011, that's the year of the census and redistricting. And so unbeknownst to me, when I was elected, the county government gets redistricted, redrawn every 10 years, just like congressional maps and state house maps. But at the county level, the chair of the Republican Party and the chair of the Democratic Party serve on the 5-person committee along with the county prosecutor, county treasurer, county clerk. And so here I'm, newly elected chair of the Dems. I get to serve on this thing, and I go into it, naive. I'm thinking to myself, okay, yeah, we've been given a job, a task to redraw this map. Here's the criteria we're supposed to use. We're supposed to keep the townships whole and, keep as balanced of a population as possible between the districts. And so I'm the type that, I get my Excel spreadsheet and I just go through every possible combination for these maps. And I find the, mathematical optimal map for redrawing our county commission districts. And I think to myself, okay, yeah, I'm going to put this forward. And of course, everybody's going to be on board with it because it best meets the criteria. The numbers are there. It's obviously the best map. And yeah, I'm aware that, corruption occurs, but I always think that's at, the Lansing or DC. But I go to this meeting and yeah, they've, submitted these other maps. And I begin to realize the other 4 are just going to be pushing through this map that definitely does not meet the criteria as well as my map. And that map was clearly designed to protect the incumbent county commissioners and just reaffirm that, okay, for the next 10 years, the districts are all going to be very heavily Republican, and the Dems won't be able to elect anybody to the county commission. And it's like, okay, that's as blatant as gerrymandering can get. And here I witnessed it firsthand, and it just kind of, I'm left dumbfounded. I did not expect it. I was naive in thinking, yeah, okay, of course the other people are reasonable people. They're going to see my map as the best one. They're going to adopt it. But instead, kind of opens my eyes a bit. Okay, it happens even at the local level. So I leave from that experience, and I'm continuing as the chair of the Dems. This is the same time that the Tea Party is really becoming a force in the Republican Party. It was with the rise of the Tea Party that the Republicans take total control in Lansing in the 2010 elections. And locally, we have a very strong Tea Party group led by Wes Nakagiri at the time. And I had not really met Wes. But they were holding a meeting over at the bar, Memories on Old 23, and they were having this federal judge come to speak to them. And it's open to the public, and I'm like, okay, I'm interested in what does this federal judge have to say to this Tea Party group? So I show up, I sign in as myself, I'm just, I'm there, and I get to hear this judge speak. Afterwards, Wes gets up there, and he's like, yeah, just turns out we have somebody else in our audience. He's the chair of the Livingston Democrats. Jordan, why don't you come on up to the stage? And I go up there, and it's like, okay, I had no anticipation that I was going to be engaging with the audience, but so I simply say, hey, yeah, I'm so thrilled to get this opportunity. I'm the chair of the county Dems. Obviously, the people here, lean conservative. I would gladly take any question you've ever want to ask of a Democrat. Ask me any question you have. And so the audience starts throwing out questions. I remember the first one was, how can we spend money we don't have? And so I explained that, my view of the monetary policy of counter-cyclical during a recession, government should borrow and spend to stimulate the economy. And then when the economy's good, should lower spending, raise taxes to pay off the debt. And Wes kind of cuts me off to say, okay, let's not go policy route. Let's just, other conversations. So they ask, how can the Democrats call them racist and all these negative terms? And I explained that, yeah, that's not my style. I don't want to view those on the other side of the political aisle or political spectrum as evil or, I don't want to demonize. I want to understand. And so I'm not going to refer to them as, any of the derogatory terms. Likewise, I ask the same in return. Like, don't refer to us by derogatory terms. And I walk away. Afterwards, some of the members of the audience, they come up and they're so happy to have had that engagement. It kind of showed them that, yeah, not all Democrats are the demons that, they've been painted in the media that they consume. And likewise, I can get to talk to these people and realize, yeah, these are fine people. They're not the demons painted in some of the left-leaning media. And it's like, we need to have these conversations more often. Like that was my first time that I got to do what then was at my journey, my political journey going forward from that point.
Makes perfect sense. And then there's your slogan. We need to talk.
Yes.
And actually, major shout out to Wes for the fact that he recognized you in the audience and brought you up to the stage. There's a lot of people that would be too afraid to ever even give a mic to opposition. And if you don't stand firmly on your beliefs, you'd be terrified to discuss things. That whole situation worked out pretty well. It also, do you listen to any Jordan Peterson?
Yeah, I have heard him on several. I've listened to his one book on audio, the 10 life. I'm trying to blank.
The Rules for Life, the Antidote to Chaos?
Yes.
Yeah, so the reason I say that is there is a certain element. We know there's evil in the world. We know there are bad people in the world. We know there are people that are narcissistic and extreme and will trample anyone in their path in pursuit of power or whatever they want out of this life. And you almost need to have an element of danger to yourself or the ability to witness, like to see clearly. You need a lens that is capable of understanding what people are capable of to be an efficient leader. Because if you're naive, you are led astray so simply. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be able to see through the veil. I 100% know there are wonderful people on the left, in the middle, and on the right. But there are evil people that don't give a shit about anyone but themselves or an agenda or money or whatever, power, whatever it is. And you have to keep that lens on you, because if you're going to be in a role of leadership and you don't anticipate that that could be a move that's being played, you are doing a disservice to everyone. Well, the best way to really have clarity for that is you have to understand your own darkness. You have to understand your own, how dangerous people can be, because then it makes you watch for it. It makes you keep your eyes on things and say, okay, I objectively drew this based on criteria to try to do what is right. And if anything is out of alignment with what I'm going to present, I need to understand why. And then I need to be able to work through, where is this coming from? You need to keep that type of clarity. Because when you're telling that part of your story and you were like, I was shocked. I'm like, what? If I go into a leadership role, I am going to hope that you have the best intentions, but I'm going to be armed and prepared if you do not. I don't want to go into this discussion unless you would like to, but it's the same thing with like guns. Listen, if I could snap my fingers and guns had never been invented, I'm a martial artist, and you can't move your finger and take my life from me, I would do that. You can put up a sign at Michigan State University that says gun-free zone. It does nothing. Actually, it makes it safer for an attacker. If I have stripped you from a weapon, let's say right now, you're not a martial artist. Let's say I lock that door. The only thing that keeps me from violently attacking you is my self-control, my morality. No matter what you said on this podcast, I have myself under control that I wouldn't do that. But if you get into delusions and things like that, the right thing isn't the standard just because it's the right thing. There's no divine arbiter that sits above us and says, like, Jordan, this man's wrong, you are right, we're going to go with your option. And it's unfortunate. It would make life easier. But we need to be in touch with how difficult things can be. We need to prep for those conversations and then, or actions or motives or whatever you'd want to call it. And then we need to see through the veil. So when those four people sit down to you with you, no. This is why this is objectively not right. And you might not even win that discussion, because unfortunately, when you're kids, we're told the superhero always wins, right? We're told like the good guy always comes out on top. In life, that is only the case if the good guy is, or woman, is strong enough, is intelligent enough, can see through the veil, and can cultivate a group of people that say, we're not going to allow this. Like, Jordan is trying to do the right thing here, and objectively, this is the wrong thing. But we somehow in society, that naiveness has turned to, we have weakened ourselves to the darkness. You know what I mean? Like I said, I don't want to sit here and discuss guns, but like, if a guy kicked down a door right now and he has a gun on him, it doesn't matter that I'm a fighter, and it doesn't matter, like, we're going to lose. You know what I mean? So if we are not armed and able to protect ourselves from that person, we're just victimized, and we have to hope that their morality is the same level as us. That's where I wanted to get to with this. If you hope that other people automatically uphold the morality and the standards at which you live your life, you are a naive person in the world, because there are evil people. There's murderers, there's rapists, there's power-driven psychopaths, there's narcissists. And good men like you and I, what is our number one goal? Protect our loved ones, our community, and our children from these evils. Right. If you can't see the evil, how do you prep for it? You know what I'm saying? And like, you don't even want to admit those things. Like, no one wants, me and you, if we could just shake our hands and say, hey, let's just eliminate all the evil from the world, and objectively, let's figure out math formulas to make it right. We'll do, life would be so much better, man. But unfortunately, everybody is not driven by benevolence. No. You know what I mean? And like, so, and this is almost not to rant, but like, I want you to stay in politics. I want you to remain a leader in the community. Like, having met you now and talking with you, it's like, man, that's another man that I believe genuinely to the core you are trying to do what you believe is right. That is the essence of everything that leadership should be. But if you don't identify where the chaos can come from, and it can come from within, it can come from your own party, it can come from strangers, it can come from loved ones. You have to have the lens that allows you to say, this isn't right. And then we need to talk, because then that's the magic. So let's keep going with your story. Like, I've been fascinated so far, and I believe anyone that listens to this story is going to see the man that you are first, and that is where the support should come from. It shouldn't be a label. You know, like, if anyone ever supports you just because you're a Democrat, or me just because I'm Republican, or that's the whole, you have it backwards. You should support Jordan because you believe in Jordan. You support James because you believe in James, etc.
Yeah. And so 2014, I end up getting married. I moved to Milford for a year, and so I had to stop being chair of the county Dems because I technically lived just outside. But then I come back, and 2014, I decide to run for state representative in the Howell district. And at the time, the incumbent was term limited, so there was a primary on the Republican side with, I believe, 5 candidates that had announced. And so my approach was, okay, I'm the lone Democrat. There's 5 Republicans. I'm going to put it out there. Hey, any of you want to sit down and talk, and we can show the public how we're supposed to engage with each other is disagreeing but still civil and respectful political members? And I figured every one of them should have the incentive to take me up on my offer, because if they sit down with me and engage with me, that immediately elevates them as my, the one who should be my opponent in the primary. That should help them, or in the general, that should help them in the primary. But no, not one of them. One at first accepts the offer, but then she changed her mind. And so they just kind of...
Do you know why? Why were they unwilling?
It can only be assumptions on my part, and sadly, it's mostly negative assumptions. The way I view it is, okay, let's say you're an MMA fighter, and if you were on social media and you see all these people, doing shadow boxing and hitting the heavy bag and showing off their, MMA skills to, in a safety of a bubble, and you were like, hey, how about we, set up a match, like let's get in the octagon together, and they ducked you constantly every and this was everyone. You see all these people out there portraying themselves as very capable at MMA, but as soon as you suggest, hey, let's actually put our skill to the test, and they find a reason to just no, I'm good, you'd probably think, okay, either A, they don't have the confidence of their own abilities, or like they're cowards. I don't know. I don't want to make those assumptions, but I don't have a better explanation as to why.
Or maybe they just don't see the benefit of the discussion, but that's the erosion of politics as perfectly defined. Like, the reason things are falling apart is because people are not having reasonable, civil discussions. Yeah. So maybe in their mind, like, why am I going to sit down and talk to this Democrat? It makes no sense to me. He doesn't agree with me anyway. It's like, for the people. That's why. Yeah. You're supposed to do it because the First Amendment of the nation is important.
It's what the voters deserve. If we're both running for the same office, the voters deserve to see us have a conversation with each other. Like, that's at a minimum. If all it is that we're going to be in our little campaign silos talking at the voters, never to each other, and never giving them a real side-by-side comparison, that does a disservice to the voters. It does a disservice to the whole system. So 2014, yeah, of course, I end up getting 27% in the general election, because very, very Republican district. okay, all good. I end up 2016. I ran for library board, which I got to. I was unopposed, and so I get to serve on the Brighton Library, and I absolutely love the Brighton Library. Um, but 2020, I decide, okay, I'm going to run for county clerk. So now this is countywide, and the reason I'm running for county clerk is because of what happened in 2011. I want to be once again a seat at the table when we're redrawing the county commission districts.
Less naive too. You're going to
Yes.
sit back there like you're knowing what you're going into
Well,
now.
yes. And so it's like, okay, we need to have more than just the chair of the Dems that are on this 5-person committee. So I run, I'm the leader of this slate of 3 of us, the county prosecutor, county treasurer, and me as the county clerk candidate. And all 3 of us are running on the same premise of, hey, let's not gerrymander the county government next year in 2021. That's the entire premise of, because I mean our county clerk otherwise does a fine job. I don't have any other reason why she needs to be fired, but I did not trust that she would not gerrymander, and so it's like this is my entire campaign platform. And yeah, I also knew, okay, going in, not going to win, ended up with 30 whatever percent of the vote, because yeah, it's a Republican county. When I'm stepping forward, it's to give the voters a choice. If I don't run, there's a good chance the Democrats aren't going to have anybody else running, and then the voters don't even have a choice. They get to their ballot and they see one name for the seat, and that is it. So 2022, I had already promised my wife, okay, well, I ran for Brighton City Council in 2021, and that's the first time that I went into a race thinking, hey, I can actually win this. I put all of my efforts into it because I loved the city government. And I figured, yeah, this is another nonpartisan board I can serve on and really improve my city community. I went into it, high hopes, high expectations, ended up about 3 dozen votes shy. And so it was a little bit of a heartbreaker, but okay. Then a couple months later, one of the incumbent city council members steps down, and so city council is going to choose a replacement. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I was just the runner-up, of the 8 people running, I was 5th. Top 4 got elected. I was 5th. I'm still interested in serving. And I had such a high respect for all the incumbent city council members that it's like, yeah, I'm on good terms. I know that they're pretty much all Republicans, but it's a nonpartisan board. They saw my campaign, saw what I was trying to do, which is not at all a partisan thing. It was just, simply trying to serve the community. They ended up, choosing the person who came in 6th. And again, that was a little bit of a gut punch, more so than the election, because it then dawned on me, okay, yeah, these incumbent people that I viewed as my friends, they don't actually want me on city council with them. So I kind of then just, wipe my hand. Okay, I'm done with city council. I don't want to serve on a board like that with others who don't want me there. I have enough in my life, serving on the library board and such, that I don't need to serve on city council. If the other city council members would prefer that I'm not be there, okay, I'm done with city council. And so because I had put my all into that race, I had promised my wife I'm not running for anything in 2022. But I'm still involved with the Livingston Democrats. We recruit enough candidates to fill the ballot. 2 weeks before the filing deadline, our state Senate candidate had a heart attack and thankfully has survived and is recovering well. But I mean, he almost did not. And so he had to drop out 2 weeks before the filing deadline. It's a state Senate race. There's only 38 of them in the state. We've got to find somebody, and it's last minute, and the party has no one else that is willing to step up. So okay, once again, my wife gave me the okay that yeah, I can break my promise. I can run for state Senate, and I go in knowing again, I can't change the outcome. No matter what, I'm not going to get a new career come November. I'm not actually going to get elected, but I can still use the race and the campaign to do what I would want to see other candidates do. And so, yes, we need to talk. That is the entire premise of my campaign in 2022, is that I just want to sit down and have those conversations.
And honestly, the two-party system is half of the reason things are so broken. Imagine if there was no teams. It's like an NFL football game. I'm an Eagles fan. I'm a Chicago Bears fan, and so that means you suck, and that means we're awesome. If you just got rid of the two-party system and you had intelligent human beings that were going to debate difficult topics in search of the truth, and you only selected people based on their candidacy and how fit they are for the role, you would have a way better system of government. So it's almost like it's by design set up to like, you're going to have a divide. In some areas, Democrats are going to win no matter what. No matter how amazing the Republican candidate is, he's not winning. And there are some areas that no matter what the Democratic person says, no matter how hard they campaign, even if they raise a tremendous amount of funds, they're going to lose. And like that is such an undermining of the importance of putting the best people in positions. It's like against a hierarchy in general. You listen to the music that you deem is best. You go to the jiu-jitsu coach that you believe will help you the most. You work for the brokerage that you believe in, whatever it is. And you have a system that undermines that completely because you have gotten the door closed in your face without a legitimate shot. And it sounds like another part of your story that is relevant throughout so many chapters is you're a man that searches for the truth, and you want to do things the right way. And I don't know how you feel about this. It's unfortunate when I'm sitting here listening to your story because like you've been suppressed by people on the right and not even been given a seat at the table, and you deserve a seat at the table. If I'm on city council, I don't give a shit if you're left or right. I care about, are you going to bring intelligent conversation to our board, and are we going to discuss what is right for people, and are we going to search through that, and we're going to control ourselves, and we're going to try to do the right thing for our city. If that's the case, I don't care that you are blue or red or you have a D or an R. I care about, are you a good man that's trying to do the right things? Because honestly, I'm going to be challenged more by you than I am by a Republican. If I sit down with a conservative guy, he might just let me say whatever, and he's like, well, we're on the same team, we're close enough. You're going to say, anytime we have a difference, you're going to say, James, I don't really feel that way, and here's why. And through that discussion and dialogue, we're going to become better people. We're going to challenge ourselves. My fiance is like one of the number one sources of growth in my life because we are so vastly different. And I deeply love and appreciate her for the ways I've had to grow to be a better man for her son. And it's the same way when you are around people with different ideas. One of the things that I witnessed, because you're at 2020 in your story, is almost anything that came from the right was misinformation, was not accurate, that was the same type of suppression. You lived through 2020 with me. Mm-hmm. If you said anything outside of the narrative, you didn't have room to speak. It was like, be silent. And that type of suppression was, I was infuriated to my soul. Like, how dare anyone blanket everybody like this and say, shut up, doesn't matter any evidence or facts that you can bring to the table. We can label you misinformation. We can take you off social media platforms. We can shut down your voice. Guess what? As I'm sitting here with you and I'm hearing your story, you've experienced that on a small scale. We are the same. You have experienced that being a Democrat in a red area. And it gives me a deep level of like empathy for your situation because you don't even get a fair shake. You know what I want to see? Jordan Genso on a stage as the best Democratic representative if you were selected, and I want to see the best Republican possible. And I want to see you guys discuss things. And I want the people to be able to listen. And then it should be the basis of the conversation, like you and I were saying before this podcast, should be the truth and should be morality. And if we are not trying to structure things with those goals in mind, well, then get out of the conversation because that should be the objective. If your spearhead doesn't lead to somewhere that's beneficial for your family, my family, our community, then like just go somewhere else, you know. But Livingston County needs to do better. We need to do better. Not just Livingston County, people in general, because let's take it to a super blue area. It's happening to Republicans. We need to allow people to have a voice and let other people listen to their words and then make decisions based upon what is right. And that's why these dialogues are important. You know, I bet you most people are going to think, man, was your conversation with him terrible or anything? If they were like that hardcore team mindset, and you're like, no, it was wonderful. It was awesome. We enjoyed each other's company. We had great debate, you know? So You're at 2020. The pandemic's crazy. What was the pandemic like for you, for your family, for your business? And then we'll start to build up to today.
So for 2020, in my view, when it came to the COVID such, I viewed myself as fairly moderate or mild but at the same time, I've already made it clear, I'm very trusting, and I respect that the individuals who were placed in positions of authority to make the decisions as to how to keep the public safe, I was going to defer to their judgment to, whenever possible, as long as it didn't, totally violate my constraints.
But you could see how the city council that was making the systems and the gerrymandering that might take place, it's the same trust.
Yeah.
It's the same trust.
Yes.
They are not profit driven. They're not going to make billions upon billions of dollars and reap unbelievable benefits while regular people get absolutely massacred, where 35 million people get unemployment, where small businesses are massacred. They're doing it because they love us. Let's go back to 2010 and say, does the government make its decisions because it loves people, or does it do it for expansion, power, things? Very often, it's that same lens. You know what I mean? So sorry to interrupt.
No, yes. And so, I mean, I even recently looked back at some of the conversations I had during like the initial stages of lockdown, and me just saying like, yeah, okay, I disagree with some of these decisions that are being made. At the same time, I'm willing to abide by them just because I also know it's not my responsibility. If the death numbers spiked, nobody's going to be pointing their fingers at me. They would be pointing it at the governor. So I'm going to give her some leeway even when she's making decisions I disagree with. At the same time, it's fine to disagree. I'm not looking to shut down anybody who has a different opinion. Let's have the dialogue. It's always a good thing. I ended up in 2020 starting my own podcast with the premise. I called it Civil War Diplomacy, because in my view, we're in the middle of like a cold civil war. And yeah, I want to be a diplomat. I want to be someone who can reach across and start to have those conversations and just, by engagement, finding the common ground, lowering the temperature. I want to keep things cold. I don't want it to turn hot. And so, after the 2020 election, it's like, okay, the Democrats, they got control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. They got the trifecta in D.C. And I remember, 4 years prior, the Republicans had it. And at the time, I was just like, I want to talk to somebody who just, voted this way and just be able to bounce ideas. Okay, like, do you support what the Republicans are now doing with? So 4 years later in 2020, the Democrats now have the trifecta. I'm going to give any Republican the platform to have their questions answered. If they want to know if I support what's going on with such and with what they're doing with the Democrats now having control in D.C., if they are just looking to have the conversation with somebody to put up the defense for what's happening, yeah, I want to give them that platform. I want to see can I actually defend it, or am I going to agree with their scrutiny and all that? And so I start a podcast, and it is quite the challenge to find guests who are willing to come on to play that role of, okay, scrutinize me. I called the one segment like Grill a Donkey. Here, I'm a Democrat. Just grill me, because
That's a really catchy name.
I'm willing to be, in the vulnerable position. I don't know what you're going to ask or what you're going to say. See if I have a response, because you deserve that. You're now in the minority. Like, the Democrats have taken control. You at least deserve to have your concerns heard and responded to. Nobody at the national level is going to respond, but at least me here locally, that's one thing I can do. I can create a platform to provide that opportunity. And so I do this podcast. I get 4 guests from my right who come on, including Mike Detmer. He was my final guest.
Was that selected on purpose?
Well, I mean,
Jordan, be honest with me right now.
I was kind of hoping that Mike Detmer would come on and it would spur more people to come on. Because him and we had a conversation that, yes, we did not find much agreement.
I don't think I would find much agreement with that.
But
you picked the Sarah Palin outlier on that one. But anyway, you were like, how do I find non-intellectualism in policy? That's exactly.
I had Buddy Morehouse on, and him and I discussed
I don't
charter
know
school. He's local, heavily involved with charter schools, and yeah, I mean he ran for state rep way back in the early 2000s on the Republican side. And yeah, he's a local Republican journalist, and it's like, okay, now I was a former chair of the local charter school here at Flex Tech, and so as
You were at Flex Tech?
I was the board president from 2012 through 2018 or thereabouts.
I used to go there and do some motivational speaking with those kids and like did some seminars there and stuff
Yeah.
because I've tried to. That's a school that's got a lot of kids that are struggling. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, no, and when I joined the board there, and yeah, I think I became board president in like 2015, but I didn't have much experience with charter schools, and coming from Democratic circles, the Democrats often view charter schools as part of the problem. But here I get into it and I realize, oh, wait, no, we're not part of the problem. There is a proper role for charter schools. And absolutely, I want to be an advocate to fight for that role and defend charter schools from attacks from the left because, they can't just be bad. There is always nuance, and there's a way in which they can, be a benefit. And I think that, whenever you make the blanket statements, whether it's whatever side it's coming from, it's like, no, let's find the nuance. Let's find the intelligent way in which we can get, a good outcome here. And so I do my podcast, but yeah, after the Mike Detmer episode, and that's where you're talking about, people trying to silence others. I got so much criticism from the left for having Mike Detmer on my show because I was, giving him a platform. And it's like, hey, at this point, he's looking to run for Congress, and he deserves, if he's willing to come on and he's going to engage with me and I can scrutinize him and he can scrutinize me, at least that's, he's running for Congress. Like, at least that's being accessible to the voters and getting outside his bubble. I give him a ton of credit for that. I didn't know he was then going to switch to the state Senate race that I ended up running for a year later. It was just a weird coincidence. But it was one of those that I got to give the opportunity for conservatives to have their concerns heard. But then it was difficult to find more who were willing to engage in that style of, okay, get outside our bubbles, let's engage. Even when I'm in the vulnerable position, nobody was really willing to step up.
What you said is we have to work to fix this. Don't give them a platform. If you believe in what you believe, okay, and you have substance to your ideas, and it's backed with virtue and morality and honesty and integrity, let people speak. And if they say crazy shit, it's really easy to identify. That's not a sane person. That's not the person that we put into a position of leadership. That's a crazy person. When we were children, you grew up with some kids that they were just a little nuts, okay? And you didn't say, silence him because otherwise everyone else will want to do whatever they're... No, you identify something as it is based on the reality. People show you who they are. People speak from what they believe in. This idea of it was the same thing that I was referring to in 2020. Suppress anything that is not what you want to be said. Why? Because people might think about it and then make an adjustment. That's the whole point. The entire point is to provide platforms that you can have the discussions and you can figure out what the sane ideologies are. You can figure out what the insane ideologies are. All the screaming of racism and oppression is listen, throughout time, we've gotten better and better and better and better and more distant from those things because people are realizing sane people don't support racism, okay? But listen, everything's racist now, Jordan. I'm sorry. Every single thing, there's microaggressions being taught in college. If I hold a door for a woman in New York, there are professors that would say that is a microaggression because I am asserting dominance over her and I must be a sexist, misogynist. This is garbage. And the only way to determine that it's garbage is to have conversation and realize what is sane and what is not sane. So if Mike Detmer, who I don't know personally, I've only seen some of his outlandish claims. And I am probably as far from him as I am from several people on the left. But it's I want you to speak and I want to meet you. And I'm sure even if you're insane in a lot of ways, and this is not even a direct attack on him, subject X that I'm speaking to, if you're insane in a bunch of ways, that doesn't mean that you don't have things that I agree with.
Right.
That doesn't mean that when you go home, you're not a good father. That doesn't mean that you're not a good husband. It just means what you are preaching is not healthy for society. How do I know that if I don't allow you to speak? And what you're witnessing from mass media, and unfortunately, like the left and big tech are very close together, like suppression is starting to be the standard. Guess where that is also the case? China. I've been there 5 times. 4 of the times I witnessed subhuman conditions for people. What I saw in China with the children and the conditions that people live in was disgusting to a level that I wouldn't have believed wasn't like a dystopian propaganda film. I would have been like, that's not how people live. That is. I witnessed it firsthand. I witnessed the hole cut in the ground that you have to shit in, and there's a rope that's hanging for everyone to wipe their ass with the same rope. I've witnessed malnourished kids that we stopped at this tiny little village with a bus of fighters to talk to the kids for a minute because it would mean the world to them, to just let those kids see these like powerful fighters from all over the world that are going to an event. And it is a dystopian world. Guess what they do over there? Suppress anything that is against the narrative. If me and you are in the CCP-controlled China, we don't get to say what we believe in. Me and Jordan Genso don't get to sit on a podcast and say, we think the government's fucking up on this. You're gone. And probably your family's gone. And it'll probably be an accident, or they might just take care of you and everyone knows what happened. The only way to avoid authoritarian, totalitarian, extreme tyranny, which is unfortunately the rule throughout history. If you study history, America's kind of the weird exception that led to other places leaning more democratic. Go before 1776 and look for non-tyrannical or king, queen dominated nations. You're not going to find them. How do we prevent getting back to there? We have to talk together. So it's like, I applaud you for being on the left, which does have a little bit more of a group identity politics game than the right, and you are still knowing that people have the right to speak. That is like, this right here, I hope our community watches this podcast and goes, God damn, maybe we can make some adjustments. Maybe James and Jordan or other Republican and Democrats start holding open panels where good people from this community can come together and discuss incredibly difficult topics. Yep. Topics like abortion, gun control, taxes, all of these things, they're difficult to discuss because they're so multifaceted and there's such a wide range of emotions. And if you don't even first get past the emotional reaction, you can't even get to the depth of the conversation that you need to make monumental change. How are we going to do that if we don't talk together?
And to me, the very most basic level at which that should be occurring is our elections and our campaigns. Like the simple fact that we have people who are saying, hey, vote for me in this upcoming election, that should be the first people that society says, okay, well, now engage in this conversation. If you want us to vote for you, engage.
Show me who you are.
Yes.
If you want me to support you and vote for you, I don't care what color you are.
Yeah.
I don't care about what social status you have. I don't care about what sports team you like to support. I care about who are you? What do you believe in? That's what we need to figure out. Yeah. And that's what should make people support people. If you're a straight ticket Democrat voter or a straight ticket Republican voter, you're probably part of the problem. Now, maybe you don't have the time to meet all the candidates. Maybe we are not engaging enough so the content is right there for you so you can easily determine what the person, who it is that you support. But we need to try to fix this.
Yes. And so as somebody who has run for office multiple times, I've always viewed it, my job is to make it as easy as possible for the voters to know where I stand on the issues, how I think, and how I would respond to any challenges or scrutiny to my positions. That is my obligation as a candidate, to make that as easily accessible as possible. So in 2022, when I was running for state senate, I ended up going on a podcast just to be interviewed. And afterwards, I was talking with the interviewer, and she had mentioned that, because I had said, like, I'm looking to sit down with my opponent and just have that conversation again. And she had mentioned that she was friends with the Republican incumbent, and so she would reach out, and then there was also a Libertarian candidate in our race and a U.S. Constitution Party candidate. And so it's like, okay, so this person's going to be a moderator. we're going to just do an informal, impromptu, like conversational debate. Not the formal, you have 1 minute, you have 1 minute.
No, that's garbage too.
Yeah, because that's just alternating stump speeches. That's not engagement.
Talking point, quick. Hey, you know what it is? A cheerleading rally.
Yes.
Who can get the cheerleaders fired up more? That's what it is.
Yes. And so she sends out the invites, and the Libertarian, he's on board. I'm on board. The Republican, who she's friends with, ghosts her and just doesn't respond. And so, okay, we ended up, she moderated, and me and the Libertarian, we ended up doing 2 different 1.5 hour long conversations. So there's, 3 hours of me and my Libertarian opponent in conversation on the actual issues, back and forth, topic-driven discussion. And it's like, this is exactly what the voters deserve. And it's like, it shouldn't be that hard. In today's technology, we're doing this podcast. Anybody can do this. If our political candidates don't find it within themselves to participate in something like that, that should be the bare minimum we ask of them.
Demand of them.
Yes, demand of them if they're asking for our vote in return.
To be honest, you just made something click in my brain that I never considered before. And I am always trying to do that. I'm always observing life, and I'm listening very closely. Let's think of it this way. In an area that's red, where they're most likely to win, where they're going to almost slide by as long as they don't fuck up, they're going to get the vote, why would they give you a voice? Why would they give you an opportunity to speak? I bet you if we went to a super blue area, let's say I run in that area, they're going to probably do everything they can to avoid conversation with me because, they're going to win unless they get on a stage with you or with me and we hit a home run. So it might not be the right and it might not be the left. It might be people with insecurity. Because I will debate anyone in the world, but so will you. We saw it in 2020. I challenged the governor. And bro, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to be a citizen that's breaking the law and is considered a bad person. I try to live my life as the best version of myself that I can be. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to fold over if I don't believe in something. I'm not going to do it. You might be getting subjected to insecurities in people that are afraid to have the dialogue because if they say nothing, they're probably going to win.
Yeah.
If they try to debate with you, and let's say they expose that they're not that sane, they're not really that educated on what they're talking about, that might take them apart. Well, guess what? It would be the same thing for a Republican in a blue area. It's like the system is more of the issue than either party. It's people from the ground up need to demand better out of our elected officials. Yes. And you know where that starts? From the ground level. Washington, D.C. is not going to make the adjustments. You know where it has to come from? A grassroots, ground up, you and I and our families and our community saying, if you would like our vote, we want to see discussion. And we want to see you being a man of your word because people can say anything. I know a lot of people that they have all the right answers to fix their life. They know all the things they need to do to be better, and they don't do them. Your actions are a reflection of your words, and the more we put people out there, we get to see a clear picture of who they are. So it's like Livingston County, what you need to do is you need to give people the opportunity to show who they are, and then you need to respond accordingly. The end. Yeah.
And the story ends up coming full circle because during my state Senate race, I ended up, so I do a couple podcasts with the Libertarian, and we have good discussion, back and forth, clearly show the voters where we are on the different issues. I then also there's a Stand Up Michigan, kind of like the current.
I spoke at that Stand Up in Michigan event. It's this same one during 2020, the Stand Up Michigan?
So this was during 2022.
Oh, it must be a different one.
It's a group, they continue to meet in the auditorium where I work. They were having their monthly meetings down there. And I coincidentally just happened to come across them one day when I was going into my office, and in conversation, they're like, yeah, if you want to come talk to us, I'm like, absolutely, I will jump at
this is what I'm looking for, yes. Man.
And so I think it was August, and now to show just how much what you were saying about the incumbents or the people who are presumed to win, how they just play it safe, my opponent, they invited her to speak, and because they were supporting Mike Detmer in the primary, she refused to ever go in front of them. But here, I'm the Democratic candidate, And yeah, I walk into this room, there's like 40 of them, and for 90 minutes, like an hour, I just let them grill me on anything they want because they're potential constituents. If I were to win, they would be my constituents. I owe it to them to at least answer whatever questions they have for me. And so I stood up there, and it was very similar to that very beginning in 2011 when I was in front of the Tea Party. And it's just, okay, you have free reign. You're a crowd. I'm one. I didn't come with any backup or anybody on my side. This room is entirely on your side. Ask me anything. See how I respond. And so I engaged with them. I was in my element. And afterwards, a lot of them came up to me and were just like, yeah, you're wrong, but it's really cool that you did that. And if the people can see it and respect it and appreciate what it is, why aren't more people doing it? I don't know.
I'm telling you, you know. It's fear. It's insecurity, Jordan.
Yeah.
You know that. Because if they had nothing to hide, if there's no skeletons in the closet, if they feel extremely good about who they are and what they believe in, there's no stage that you fear. You know why the reason I can stand in extreme spotlights is because I'm not worried about what someone could try to dig up. I've been in parts of my life, I've been a fraction of the man that that I am now. I've made mistakes. I've hurt people, I've done the wrong thing, and I've grown, and I've become better, and I've learned from those lessons. And when you stand proud of who you are and willing to have a discussion, especially the stronger you are, when you're able to put your foot down and say, no, this is why it is what it is, that is such a necessary missing component, and that's what is leading us astray. That woman is just, for whatever reason, you support Detmer. That means they're going to come after me because I'm not him. Let them. You owe it to the constituency and the people that you wish to garnish support from. You owe it to them. And this is the message, man. And this podcast, we've gone for an hour and 35 minutes effortlessly, man. Yeah. And we're talking to each other. This isn't profound, but there are so many parts of this story that are profound, that could lead to monumental change if people demanded it. Imagine if people flat out said, listen, if you're not going to publicly debate, if you're not going to go out there and put your ideas to the test, we are not going to support you. Then all of a sudden, people would have to. And what is the age-old thing about politicians? They don't answer questions. That's been the case since we were little. People go up on stage, they will ramble off a bunch of nonsense that is all just, hypothetical. They will not give you a direct answer. That was a known stereotype for politicians because it's so unfortunate that you're like, can you just give me an answer on what you believe? Even I will respect you more if I disagree with you, but you can stand. You and I could argue till we're blue in the face on a concept, but if you can hold your ground, and as long as you're not being irrational to an evidence or a truth or something like that, I will have nothing but respect for the fact that you have a reason that has formulated that opinion and you believe in it. But we're doing a disservice, man. Yeah. So your message, not to beat a dead horse again, we need to talk. I will support that message 100%. And if there's any avenue, Jordan, at which you think, because I'm a man that's never got into politics. I've only ever voted one time in my entire life. I'm 35, right? Because I try to stay out of that realm. I may be running for an office in 2024 because I'm sick and tired of the leadership that I'm seeing. I'm looking around and going all right, this is garbage. And I'm not a perfect man, but I'm on a quest to be my best, and I care about people deeply, and I owe this universe a great, a gratitude. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, I almost ended my own life as a child, and I was in some super dark places. Now I have an extreme feeling of gratitude for life. And because of that, I want to serve people that deserve to have a good life too. And if there's anyone else that should be, those are the people that I want to be leaders. So it's almost like when I look at myself in the mirror, and it's if you have this good of a life, and you've been able to follow your dreams, and you've been able to squeeze so much out of this life, how dare you not give back? How dare you? You know what I mean? And if there's any way that I can help, whether it's being a moderator, whether it's being a platform, whether it's, at some point, maybe I do run a multiple person thing and I'm the central person because I am only in search of the truth and what's right. And if you say something that is in alignment with what I believe those to be, then I'm going to be in support of it. And if your opposition said something that was clearly out of alignment with a truth, I'm going to dig into that because there are no teams to me. This is just people searching for the right answers. And it's a very hard world, man. It's difficult. Like, if problems were easy, we would already have solved them. So I truly want to say that I appreciated our time today. I think we're going to have to do a part 2 because we there's still so much more that we can discuss. There's current events, there's political issues, there's things that are plaguing our community, there's issues with schools, there's elected officials. But we're already like an hour and 40 minutes of, I believe when people consume this content, they're going to see those are just good men and trying to do the right thing. And maybe we can help. So I hope you enjoyed this. And, anything else you'd like to say, anyone you'd like to shout out, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
I am just so grateful to you for what you do with your show. I've watched several episodes that I love that you do it. And I think that your willingness to just give me a platform in this situation in which, yes, I know what it's like to be on the other side where, oh, no, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't give that person a platform because they don't agree with you. And so it's one of those things that I think you and I are of the same generation that recognizes how they've been doing it is not sending us in the right direction, that the politics of the past where people don't engage, that needs to be the generational shift that occurs, is that it goes to these podcasts, because it's so much more accessible and easily able to create this content. Then yeah, I mean, I would love it if we did a part 2 and showed people, let's just come with a couple topics that we're going to discuss and show people how those conversations can occur. I would count me in anytime. And so yes, thank you so much for having me on today.
I mean, you remember the age-old adage of do not discuss religion and politics.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Somebody lied to us because we need to.
Yes.
We need to discuss ways to live, healthy behavior, how to put your lives in order. And that's the magic. That's where we actually do improve. And maybe that's how we keep this society together, all right? Like, it's getting rough out there for a lot of people, and we need to turn this thing around. And I believe that there is a pendulum effect taking place. I believe that things started to get quite a bit extreme. People got really emotional. People got really fired up. But I feel like the pendulum is starting to return, and we're starting to get a little bit more sanity and willingness out of people. And maybe that is like the stop button that we needed to make us go, hey, it's time to do better. Because one of the best and worst parts about this life is so many times your strength comes from the darkness. The best innovations, motivations, changes in life come during the worst times. Like, it's wired in the way, if only like when things were great, you just made them better and better and better. It tends to be when there's extreme struggling and suffering and strife, people can become better. So again, man, it was amazing having you here today. I can't wait for our community to hear this podcast, and I'm sure there will be a part 2. So thank you very much, Troy.
Thank you.